Hello, everyone, and welcome to Intuitive Minds by Shelley Wyndham and myself, where we elevate consciousness globally. Our topic today is the freedom of the ninth wave. Fascinating topic. And we are so fortunate and we have great gratitude to have Calleman and Sean here as our guest speakers. Now, I'm going to give Shelley the opportunity to introduce our guest speakers. Thank you, Shelley, and over to you.
Thank you, James. Well, I'd love to welcome Calleman, Dr. Calleman and Sean Caulfield to our platform, Intuitive Minds again. And we've approached this whole topic, the Mayan calendar, in an attempt to drop slowly the information from part 1, part 2, part 3, this being the third part today, in an effort to help humanity to understand the gravity of this magnificent teaching and experience that Carl and Sean will take us on in this journey today. Dr. Calleman holds a PhD as a toxicologist and is a speaker and an author of 8 published books on this topic, the Mayan calendar. And having dedicated some 30 years to this topic, it speaks to truly something that not only has got his soul, needs to get the soul of humanity as the significance of this topic, the Mayan calendar, and what it can teach humanity. Sean Caulfield is originating from the UK, lives in Cape Town today, is an artist and has been fascinated and studied the indigenous artwork and the spirituality of that, having found that gravity that pulled him to the Maya lands, and then meeting Dr. Calleman himself, and as a student, as we all are, of students of life of this Mayan calendar. And it is a great privilege and an honor from James and myself to introduce both of you to part 3, Dr. Calleman and Sean Caulfield. Thank you for being here, and I hand it over to you to take us on this journey in whichever way you wish. The freedom of the ninth wave. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having us. It'll be a great chance to deepen our discussions, Sean and I. But to introduce the viewer to this topic, I want to show.
You are viewing Carl Johan Calleman's screen.
What?
Right.
Can you see this?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So a fundamental aspect that everybody confronted with the Mayan calendar needs to deal with is the phenomenon of the plumed serpent. And what I'm showing here are 2 examples from really very ancient times, how people already in those days started to revere a serpent. To the left, we have this serpent sculpture, as it's believed to be the oldest piece of art on our planet. And it's actually a serpent found in a cave in Botswana. And we may wonder then, why did people already in these times do this? It's a lot of work to make a sculpture like this. And why then did they choose a serpent? Why didn't they choose another human being or something like that? The picture to the right is equally telling. This is from Navali Kori. So it's 10,000 years old. It's a sort of a sister site to the more famous Göbekli Tepe. But it tells us that people already then, 10,000 years ago, had the idea of a serpent influencing the mind, basically. At least that's how I interpret this. Now, what is a serpent? Well, if you think about it, if you experience some kind of a wave-like movement on a spiritual level, then what would you use in order to symbolize it, to share it, which is really what people did then through this art. And Well, the most natural thing if you're talking about the sine wave with its ups and downs and smooth progression, is actually then to use the snake or the serpent. And it may sound very strange to us. We don't think of serpents or snakes as that elevated animals. And in fact, in the Christian and Jewish tradition, it was cursed. But we should also notice that the fact that their God took the pains to curse the serpent means that it was already a very powerful entity in the minds of people in those days. So in other words, what I think these pictures and whoever created these sculptures are telling us is that we are under the influence on some kind of waves, and that those waves actually are playing a predominant role in our lives and in the evolution of the universe. To the Maya, the plumed serpent was the bringer of civilization, the bringer of life, the bringer of calendar. And so that was a wave movement. Ultimately, then, this wave movement is really a wave movement of consciousness. And, you know, the next slide that I'll show is modern science, but really not as materialistic as it has become. If we go to the pioneers of quantum physics, like Max Planck and Erwin Schrödinger, they both say that consciousness is fundamental. It can't be explained by anything else. And it's not, and as Max Planck said, I regard matter as derivative from consciousness. So these are very important things when it comes to understanding this whole phenomenon of different waves of the Mayan calendar, because these are waves of consciousness, waves that change consciousness even through various quantum leaps and so forth. And it's, at least to me, it is a little bit comforting to when you in today's world of science, which has become so materialistic, the pioneers, at least of quantum theory that we see here, actually said that consciousness is primary, it's fundamental, it cannot be explained by anything else. Now, if it is fundamental, then that also means that this is really what we should be looking at, because that would be the original forces that drives our evolution. And just to complete this little introduction with a couple of slides, the interesting thing then about the Mayan calendar system, as you can see here, is composed of 9 different waves. And sort of in accordance with the quantum theory, these different waves are produced by, symbolized, I should say, by terraces. There is a quantum leap taking place every time you are moving from one wave to another. And the evolution of the universe in terms of how the waves are influencing it actually is very well described by a pyramid like this. We're meant to go to the top of the pyramid, to the 9th wave. But then in order to get that, we have to go through the first, the second, and make all the quantum leaps in consciousness between these different waves. And they all stand on each other. So what that means is that they don't replace each other. We cannot replace the lower waves because for some reason we don't like them. We have to stand on them and bridge it up, find the bridge to find something new and maybe more powerful on top of what already has been created in this way. And this is the final point I want to make here before we start to discuss a little bit more loosely, is that this makes the Mayan calendar system into a calendar system that has a direction. It is a calendar system in a universe that has a purpose. And the purpose and the direction is to climb this pyramid, to go through the various steps and arrive at a state which is fundamentally informed by the ninth wave. So, Sean, do you want to say something more just in here in the beginning? And
yes.
we should.
Thank you, Carl, and thank you, Shelley and James, Dr. James. Carl, everything you say is beautiful, and I've been studying this for so long. And yes, it's really a calendar that represents consciousness itself. And so, as you say, it's fundamental, so it can't be explained by something else. It is an awareness, you know. And so when it's like when you tune into a frequency on the television or in the radio, you got to tune into that frequency to know it's there. So this is almost like showing people a frequency that they didn't know was there, and it's primordial. It's from the beginning, yet it's been forgotten. And so this is my whole thing about, you know, my journey has been to go to the indigenous teachings, you know, and through that I've awoken to understand myself and life so much better. And for me, that is so important, you know. I think if the world, this modern world that lives now, is so caught in this duality of the physical dimension, you know, if you connect that and understood the Mayan calendar, it would really assist you, because as you say, Carl, it gives you direction. So, you know, that's a beautiful intro with the slides, Carl. Thanks. Yeah.
Yes, and I think it's important when we talk about the ninth wave, it is in a sense then an end point or something to strive for, but it will not negate all the previous evolution. We have to incorporate whatever has come with all the lower levels of consciousness and so forth. But I would say that the goal for somebody who just simply honors this creation is to come to the point where the ninth wave, which by its very nature is a unity consciousness wave, where that comes to dominate their mind, comes to dominate their being, and not be dominated by lower waves that are sometimes dualistic. We can't erase those, but we can give them a more humble position in our sort of evolutionary plan.
Thank you, Carl.
Sean, can you talk a little bit about how you have been using
Yes.
both the ninth wave and the Tzolk'in in this context?
So they really are fundamental as well. You know, they're just consciousness, aren't they? They are the plumed serpent, and they are different frequencies. And so from my understanding, the ninth wave, when it was activated, something special happened for the first time ever. And this is where it is a case of trying to understand it in terms of what it means when the completion of the Mayan calendar came to its completion in 2011, because all along everyone had been following the Tzolk'in, but here all of a sudden comes the ninth wave. So traditionalists will now follow the Mayan calendar, Tzolk'in 260-day calendar, because it's been followed for so long. But yet you've got this 234-day ninth level that from that the ninth wave frequency emanates in terms of an 18 days of light and an 18 days of the light being in the shadow. So we are actually in the 136th day at the moment. And so this is 18 days of a peaking energy. The sine wave movement is sort of, in a way, going up a mountain. And then we are on the Tzolk'in. Today is 5 reed or ben, according to the traditional Tzolk'in. And where the beginning of this 18 days began, that was 12 manik or deer. And so there is an undercurrent that is collected from that very first day, about 6 days ago, from what I understand, that is actually emanating through these 18 days. And so deer is all about returning to nature to find spiritual strength. And it's the 4 hooves which create stability, but also agility to avoid the traps. So there could be that energy follows through these 18 days. And yet at the same time, each sine wave movement of a peak and then a valley is 36 days long. So we're on the 6th day of 36. And so the first 9 days could be understood as like you're going through an etheric medicine wheel. And so the first 9 days is the east direction. And then you get to the second 9 days and it's the south direction. And then you get to going into the valley, it goes into the west direction, you go into night. And then that's another 9 days. And then you got 9 days. The last 9 days starts with north. So if one is connected with the medicine wheel like I am and Shelley is, we can understand how the ninth wave is also like this etheric medicine wheel. So this is my take on the timekeeping. And the Tzolk'in moves in an anti-clockwise direction, and the ninth wave moves in a clockwise direction and connects to the 360-day tun. So they actually weave into each other. They're weaving the evolution of consciousness on the highest level. And so that is a small take on the timekeeping. And yeah, Carl, what do you think?
And yeah, you've been doing that for a long time, and so have I. And
yes.
you know, you might say that the 260-day sacred calendar, which is still in use among the Maya, which is really the only part of the old ancient calendar system that is used by the Maya, that will give every day a specific meaning, a specific taste, you might say, a specific aspect. But in the big scale of things, it's basically just a repeated cycle, and which means that it's not, even if it is the hub of the whole calendar system, and what then is still used mostly in ceremonies, it still is just a repeated thing. It just goes in a cycle that identically comes back. And that's not the case with the other waves that are evolutionary, where every peak in the wave takes us somewhat forward, so to speak. And we're, as you mentioned, right now in the ninth wave, we are close to the top of one of these peaks, and what that means, and I feel that personally, because that when we are in those peaks in the ninth wave, I find that there is more wind on the back on my back for whatever has to do with developing this unity consciousness, whatever projects I have that is meant to bring that about, gets its wind on the back in the peaks. And then, of course, when the valleys begin, then you're again faced with things that are not really consistent with that kind of unity consciousness that ultimately is meant to be the direction of the universe. And then you have to deal with those. So the qualities of the peaks and the valleys of these different waves, they are fundamentally different, but they are the ones that are evolutionary. The Tzolk'in is not an evolutionary tool. It just keeps you learning about the different days and the meaning of the days and so forth. And it might be sometimes a good starting point for people, because people will realize, many will realize who are open to it, will realize from the use on a daily basis of the Tzolk'in that the Mayan calendar system has some truth that is even relevant for themselves. But then I also just want to strongly emphasize that unless you are actually starting to study and follow the system of waves like this, you will not really be participating in the evolutionary process.
Thank you, Carl. Thanks. Yeah. So, in terms of you mentioned in like what I was thinking about, what is so true, because like we were actually going to have this conversation about maybe it was as far back as a week ago, but we were actually in the night then, so there wasn't the energy wasn't on our back to actually create it, you know. So like now we are in the day to that, and so there's forward momentum taking us and evolving us forward. So that is true what you say. So there are synchronicities when you follow the ninth wave. You start to see the synchronicity, you know, of how these waves are aligned to the destiny. Because Carl, you do say that it's the destiny wave, Carl. The ninth wave.
I say so because it is the sort of the end, the top of the pyramid, and that's how the ancient Maya would look upon it. And we have this amazing inscription from a place in close to Palenque, a place called Tortuguero, the Tortuguero number 6, which said basically that when at this big shift point, 2011, 2012, it said that the creation will appear in its full regalia. It didn't say the world would come to an end, as some people would say, or something like that. But it would say that the creation would appear in its full regalia. And the initial reaction to this ninth wave was really all over the world, lots of movements by people who wanted sort of a change towards unity in the world. So this was when the ninth wave was initially activated. It was what started the so-called Occupy movement, and maybe more importantly, the Arab Spring. And things have changed, and there are reasons for that. But initially, what happened with the Arab Spring was basically people in Cairo and Damascus just shouting, "One, one, one." In other words, they were expressing their desire for their respective peoples to be one in Egypt, regardless if they were Coptic believers or Muslims or same thing in Syria at the time. Now, and then the Occupy movement was also quite a big thing, more in the Western world, of course. But what came out was a completely new way of looking at politics, where it was sort of basically holistic and expressing the unity desire, and people then basically were very fed up with banksters and dictators and so forth. Now, what's happened since is not as rosy as what happened when there was the initial impetus of the ninth wave. But the initial impetus definitely was that kind of a desire for unity. Now, what happened at the in end of 2011 was, however, that these waves, they turned into from peaks to valleys, and a new, much more sinister reality has come to dominate even. Today, there basically, it has shifted over, and it has to do with the lower waves and the dark periods in the lower waves coming to influence us. I still think it was amazing to see that this desire for unity actually manifested right on time in 2011. Of course, not everyone is influenced by these waves. There's a number of reasons, I think, that some people are more connected to the cosmos or to the underlying quantum field that this is all about. There is these waves create an interference pattern, and so these interference patterns create an underlying quantum field that incorporates really all the different waves, and in ways that we can essentially predict and understand the emphasis of the waves will shift from one to another in different parts of the world and stuff like that. But now at the current time, we're not going to have, I don't think, a very rosy immediate couple of years. But I do think that there will be a time, basically starting in 2031, when there will be a return to this desire for freedom and democracy. And then not only will the seventh wave have been changed its nature, but the ninth wave will then continue to guide and drive those that has this real spiritual intention for the world to be a better place.
Thank you, Carl. What I was thinking about in terms of everything you're saying is, we're talking about the nine-level Mayan calendar, but because all the waves came to fruition, the ninth wave was activated. So really, the ninth wave. What is the ninth wave? It's the completion. It symbolizes the completion of the nine-level Mayan calendar, and it could be that all nine waves have now converged and are the power of that convergence has created the ninth wave. And so at that moment, that's from what I can remember in your books, Carl, you say that Bulun Yuktiku descended upon earth, the nine-step deity, lords of time. And so at this moment, also, all the creation waves went into a valley or into the night. So it's interesting to think what that all actually means, what happens when time enters the west direction, because that's really essentially what happened. Time went into the west direction. So that is a time of healing, because we've been through so much processes to get where we are, and we've been off center. And so we've now, and that was really the time of growth, and we made many mistakes, but now we're going in 2011, and on the 29th of October, we went into, the west direction. And so it's just my sort of like analyzing mind in terms of what that might mean. I feel that the whole thing about the freedom of the ninth wave, so if we are living true to the heart, I feel that that is aligned with the ninth wave. Carl, what do you think?
Well, I think that depends on the person. But I would say it's true for somebody who wants to manifest the plan of the universe.
Okay, yeah.
And not everyone.
Yeah.
I'll just show another picture here a little bit to illustrate something you were saying,
yes.
Which is that things turned west, so to speak. Yeah. It's a little bit interesting because it's not from the Maya or from Mesoamerica, but the plumed serpent was revered also in large parts of the North America proper. And this then is from a tribe that lived in Oklahoma a long time ago. And what it shows is actually the connection between the plumed serpents, or actually here you have 4 plumed serpents, but it's telling us that it's connected to the 4 directions. And what that means is that there is we're here, as we're talking about the ninth wave, we're not going into detail to analyze or so forth, but what is telling us is that in order to understand how these waves are playing out and the kind of effects that they have, we will have to also consider that there is a connection between these waves or plumed serpent and the 4 directions. And this is something I discovered fairly recently, that the presence in the US Southwest in ancient times, and sites like Chaco Canyon, Mesa Verde, and others, that they actually had this belief in the plumed serpent. And apparently there are groups among these Pueblo Indians that they've been living here throughout this time, and they still revere this plumed serpent. It's still part of their ceremonial life. It's a little bit of an aside, but it's sort of people probably underestimate the role that the serpent used to have in ancient belief systems. And it's not really beliefs, as what we can see when we analyze the Mayan calendar really deeply. We find that this is a real thing. It's just that it's been ignored, or as you said, Sean, forgotten. But once you start to, if you know how to get into it, so to speak, and my work certainly does help with that, you will see that this is a real thing. These waves are real, and they have played an enormous role in creating the kind of world that we're in. And I would say also, as a little bit of an aside, the fact that these waves are sort of activated sequentially and create new interference patterns whenever a new wave has been activated is really also something that has kept the universe going, that has connected it on the level of, on the underlying level of consciousness. We're connected from the very beginning of the Big Bang, the very beginning of the universe. And these waves that have created interference patterns with others, they have sort of stabilized the evolution of all life, including the human life and our special mental and spiritual evolution. And what I'm saying here is that it's not just a sort of the universe has not evolved through a series of accidental events or something like that. It has evolved and maintained its continuity and its connections with everything else, because the underlying field holds these different waves and connects us from one level to another. And this is how for 16 billion years, the universe has been evolving. And in a sense, that is this stabilizing thing of these waves and creating connection, both forward and backward in time, is really maybe something that has been ignored because we have been living in a world that has not recognized this kind of the role of the plumed serpent. And maybe I should also say something here. When you start talking about the plumed serpent, people very often come to think of the story in the book of Genesis about God cursing the serpent. And for many people, it remains a very negative thing. The serpent is still a symbol of some evil, even to some extent. And you might wonder why is that? Well, it is probably because the waves, they have downturns, and then people will be tired of the serpent. And it's not that we have any chance, because that's really, it is driving evolution, whether we like it or not. But then when there are downturns, and you might say one of those began in right after the big unity thing with the Arab Spring and so forth, they began a downturn, and then what did happen in our modern world at that point in time was that a lot of people in sort of New Age settings that had been saying that, oh, there will be a paradise immediately in 2012, they were disappointed, and they turned into completely different ideas and just abandoned the Mayan calendar, which is a sort of a wave movement, a serpent-based way of understanding reality. But anyway, what's said about the serpent in the book of Genesis, then in the Christian Jewish Bible, then is really something that has come to keep people away from the kind of ancient view of a fundamental role of the serpent, or of the quantum waves in our evolution.
Thank you, Carl. One of the things I was thinking is, like, where does the wave emanate from or come from? You know, like, I think you have expressed this in your work and your books, and it, from what I remember, you said comes from the cosmic center, the cosmic axis, from the, and there is actually evidence of it physically in the universe. Carl, can you maybe speak about that?
Well, evidence may be a strong word, but yes, certainly the Maya who lived in the ancient Maya who lived in what was talked about as the long count, which is the 6 of these waves on the pyramid. This 6 waves started 3115 BCE and created civilizations and the beginning of the evolution of civilizations. And what the Maya describe is that it was activated by someone they talked about as the first father, who then was in the heavenly abode, which was really at the center of the universe. And it was almost like he started a new slideshow or something like that. He started to project a new kind of a mind onto the human beings. And that new mind was what resulted in civilizations, and it's been going on for 5,000 years up until the present time. But then, what was that actual phenomenon? Well, I guess what I can point to here really is that when recent 20 years, you might say, that scientists have been studying what happened at the very beginning of the universe, at the Big Bang. And they've been taking what you might refer to as baby pictures of the universe for looking at the kind of radiation that was emitted at the beginning of the universe. And what they found then is quite interesting, and it was completely in contrast to what they had expected. Namely, they found that there was an axis in the very beginning, from the very beginning of the universe. And without going into length of it, it really indicates that this is what the ancient peoples talked about as the tree of life, and the Maya talked about as the tree of life. And this would be then the origination point of all the waves that we are able to download down here on our planet. And but it's interesting that, you know, they thought everything was random and there was no structure at the Big Bang. It sounds like that because it's sort of a big explosion. But then they did find that, yes, there is a structure here. There is a cosmic axis, and that is quite consistent with the you know, the mythologies of the Maya.
Thank you, Carl. So the soul, you know, the human soul and its destiny. This is really, I think, where the freedom of the ninth wave comes for me. So I would say, because we are coming to a close now, I would say that for me, anyhow, like I am connected to the ninth wave movement of 18 days of peak and then 18 days of valley, but aligning that with the cyclical Tolkien, the 260-day count. And together, that actually is aligned to the evolution of consciousness and the freedom of the ninth wave and the freedom of the soul. So would you say that makes sense, Carl?
Oh, I think it's beautifully said by you. I usually don't talk so much about the soul. I'm not exactly certain what it is, but say something more about it, please.
Okay, so the soul is the light inside of us, you know, that has memory, and that emanates from the beginning of time, you know, and so we're conscious, and so we are creation in human form that have free will and choice on earth, and so really it's the choice whether to be you know, complementary or not complementary, really, and that's the soul for me.
Yeah.
The light,
okay.
the light inside, the memory.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah. Okay, so we got one more minute.
Yeah, okay. Well, the soul, in that sense, is certainly formed by the waves and influenced by the waves, and following the waves will probably nurture our souls.
I think that the soul needs to sort of have some sort of something it can identify with, and that's why the calendar was so important for the Maya, because they understood themselves, like according to the day they were born. Like today's the 4th of July 2024. It's a 5 read, and it's the 7th day of this 18 days of peak, Carl. And you know, I mean, I feel that that's the soul. Okay, okay, I think we've come to completion now, but yeah, thank you, Shelley and James.
Well, I just want to continue listening to you guys, because I'm going on these waves that you speak of in emotion and mind and memory and hopes. And I just wanted to say on the title of the freedom of the ninth wave, you know, one of the things that I think all of us as human beings become aware a little bit now and again, a little bit more now and again, about our attempts to learn and to understand things, and that we really don't know that we don't know. But that the process of time isn't understood by any of us, really. Thinking by 2011, I love that surge that you gave voice to, Carl, around that oneness, that unity. And then whatever happened of the underbelly of those waves that came forward that brought in more of maybe a darker component. Yet I think, what we're speaking to here is learning to appreciate the value of what this universe is bringing. And the Mayan calendar, in its wave oscillations and teachings, is showing us that everything's relevant, and that we're not, we want a quick fix. We want this now. And it's like, okay,
right.
hey,
Yeah.
and I really think this is one of the greatest things. 16.4 billion years. None of us sitting here can actually put our head around that. But to say it's vast is really, beyond our understanding. And in that, this ninth wave is still happening. And I am looking forward to the moments of whatever our own evolution is, that we hold the light regardless. We find out what light is. We find out what is inside of our souls, and everything is relevant. That's going to usher in who we are becoming, and what this universe is showing, all life as creation, what it's becoming. And it's truly incredible to see the work you've done, Carl, and to hear the work also, Sean, that you've been so passionate about over these years. It's humbling and it's entertaining for me, and it's just dive into consciousness, which I absolutely love. I'm so absolutely grateful to you, Carl, for all the beautiful work you've done in this world. And Sean, for the ways that you have brought in your artistic and spiritual values to this. Thank you, both of you, for doing the work you are doing. Please continue it, and don't ever think that we're not listening as a people. And I mean, all of us, all four of us here, we stand in those words. Elevating consciousness. It's not a journey of getting the masses, maybe instantly, but every drop that what we're doing here matters. So thank you from my heart to all of you. Thank you so much, Carl. Thank you so much, Sean, for being here. And handing over to you, James.
Gentlemen, I have a final question for you. And I just would like to know, is there any link between the Mayan pyramids and the Giza pyramids? Any link of any kind that you know of?
Carl, you talk about that in your book, The Rise of Civilization.
Yeah, maybe so. It depends on what you mean by link, so to speak. And I think they are somewhat different in their purpose and in their reasons. I think the Maya built their pyramids very much like educational pyramids, like the poor man's Bible or something like that. The shaman kings that ruled in ancient times, they would demonstrate how the universe was organized, and how the purpose of the universe by climbing these pyramids. And there's a lot of additional calendrical information once you climb these pyramids. It's not just the 9 waves. There are many other things. And so they serve that kind of an educational purpose that I don't really think the Egyptian pyramids had. I think the Egyptian pyramids were very much built in order to reflect the cosmos in another way, so to speak. But the pyramids then, why pyramids? There's 3,000 years essentially between the Egyptian and the Maya pyramids. But I think it also, it does introduce this geometric structure that is part of the mind of the creators of these pyramids, and that's what really is behind it. These geometries belong to the states of consciousness that we've been talking about. But I don't think this is the place to make a detailed case for that. But yeah, pyramids everywhere does have a significant symbolism in that they are connected to the geometries of the states of consciousness that we're talking about. That's what I would say.
Thank you so much. Well, it will at least help me to remember the wisdom of the ancient people.
Yes, and it keeps, especially the Egyptian pyramids are so incomprehensible for our, how did they build them, that it keeps the mystery going, so to speak. As long as they stand there, we will still feel there is a mystery here. There's something we can't wrap our minds around, and yet it's there. And I think that's the good role that they're playing to this day.
Gentlemen,
just one last thing. The capstone on the top of the Pyramid of Giza, I think that could be correlated to the 9th wave. It's like the top.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
And of course, the Egyptian pyramids were also aligned with the 4 directions, and also the Egyptians had a belief in cosmic serpents. Haven't talked about that, but certainly the Egyptian pyramids are very, very precisely aligned with the 4 directions, and that's part of their message, I would say.
Gentlemen,
Thanks.
just a great thank you again from myself, and to our audience, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And till next time, goodbye.
Blessings.